I got into leatherworking because money. That's how it started. I had so much tacking equipment that I had set in the back of the tack room because I couldn't use it anymore because something was damaged and it was old. Buying used saddles is a lot more affordable than buying a new one. A custom saddle can be up to $20,000, but usually good working custom saddles are anywhere between $3,000 and $6,000 today. So thinking of the market and it's only going to expand, I thought to myself, man, I need to fix some of this old equipment. I can't just keep buying something or whatever. So I would go to the store and try to find leather pieces and scavenge them off of old saddles, put saddles together that some were good and some were salvageable, and some of them like a broken tree where I didn't know how to fix that or do anything with that. So what I would do is I would take pieces off of that saddle and make a good saddle out of one that was basically garbage at that time. I just spent a lot of time fixing, and then I got to the point where I'm like, man, I'd really like to have my own leather supply. I'd really like to have a machine that could do this. I'd really like to have, and I just started expanding on that. And I've always been an artist. I really enjoy art. And so expanding with that, making my own new equipment was something I thought would be really fun to do. And I found a leather supply shop and just started buying my own leather sides and learning how to cut and use tools. And it's a little bit dangerous to use some of those tools like a round knife. Whew. There is not a time that I have not nicked my finger yet with that, because that is one of the sharpest blades you'll ever see. But I really love what I do. So I just learned how to dye my pieces a little bit if I get some blood on them. But I love doing leather work. It's great. It's cathartic. Makes me feel like I'm still accomplishing something. And it's been something to help make ends meet, even just a little bit here and there when I'm in between jobs or going to school or something else like that. So it's been really nice to have that. Doing the horse work has been really good too. I have my kids to thank for being able to get back into them. When I was a kid, I loved horses. I did 4-H and local shows, but mostly trail rode. I rode everywhere. It was a great way to get out of the house and spend the summer, nice days in the winter during school. If you just had a bad day at school, I could go home and hop on a horse and forget a lot of those struggles or worries. And it's always been a great way. And I've had the best friends out of my horses and my dogs. We go everywhere together. So it's been really nice to have animal companionship. I find it really impactful in my life. And I really also have noticed that when I became a foster parent, how much it impacted the children that we brought into our home. So the kids that come from a trauma background where maybe they didn't know where their food was coming from or they didn't have safe relationships, when they have a relationship with an animal, it can be really restorative because animals are safe. They tend to be more forgiving of your mistakes, as well as they don't have the preconceived or the previous memories of a woman hurt me or a man hurt me. Then when you're trying to form new relationships with women and men, you always wonder, is that the same thing? Is this person going to treat me good? But they don't usually have a history of abuse with an animal, so they're willing to start relationships with animals. So our foster kids started to really enjoy the horses and the dogs, and that was a continuation of the leather work and a continuation of the animals. And in 2020, I opened what's called Roman's Ranch. my favorite part in the book of Romans is chapter 5, verses 3 through 5, and it's suffering produces perseverance, perseverance character, and character hope, and hope does not disappoint. And that's why I named it Romans Ranch, because I wanted to provide that hope for so many people that they didn't feel like they could stick up for themselves. They didn't feel like they had an advocate. They didn't feel like they had a way to find happiness in their own life and in their own relationships. So I really worked hard to name it something that meant a lot to me, but also that other people could relate to. And that's why I named it that. Romans Ranch is a mental health clinic serving people with trauma. Now, my specific job here is obviously it's managing the barn and the horses, but it's also providing behavioral health intervention services. And what we offer at Romans Ranch is relationship building with horses. So it's equine assisted services. It could be equine assisted learning or equine assisted psychotherapy or behavioral health intervention services. And in the process of doing that, it really helps people that have experienced trauma form new relationships and learn how to have the basics of relationships explained to them, because it's not a manual we typically get as a child or as an adult. This is a proper way to have a relationship. So it helps them. And it's been a really fulfilling dream, because I started thinking about going down this path when I went back for my bachelor's degree at Iowa State in 2010, and then in 2013 I went for my master's degree at Des Moines University. And when I did that, I was thinking, I'd love to do something helping people with horses. I'm not sure how this is going to work, but I've seen such a difference in my own family's life because of the relationship with a horse. So I've continued to do the leather work on the side, a little bit of a hobby, a little bit of income, but my trajectory has been to open Romans Ranch. And now we just got fully credentialed with Iowa Total Care and AmeriGroup, which are Medicaid managed care organizations, or MCOs, those wonderful insurance terms. We're ready to serve people with behavioral health intervention services. So these services are covered under insurance based on the fact that we are providing services. The horses happen to be there and they happen to help, but they don't have to be there. So we're still providing the same services that other people would get in any other therapy or behavioral health situation. But the horses do provide incentive for continuing to heal relationships for children that have been so therapized. I don't know if that's a term that other people use, but when children are in foster care, they learn terminology very quickly about mental health. That's a trigger for me, or that's really hard on my ADHD, or that's because of and they give a reason why they maybe chose a difficult behavior or an unhealthy coping skill in a situation. And it's really nice when they get to the point where they basically are self-diagnosing, then all of a sudden they come here and they work with the horse, and the horse doesn't care about the labels. Horse doesn't care about what they think about themselves or what they don't think about themselves. They care about how they treat them, and they care about how they show up for the relationship. And that really is both positive for the child or anybody, but I work with children, so I keep using children as my example, but it's really, really powerful for them to come into that relationship and really just be taken for who they are. And it gives them a chance to evaluate who they are and figure out how they want to be from that time on. I want to tell you a little bit about why I went into thinking about opening Romans Ranch specifically after going to Des Moines University, but I need to back up a little bit, and I'll come back to that. So to understand why I went the direction I went, you have to understand that In 1976, my dad had a severe accident flying a hang glider. He's a hang glider pilot, and he competed and holds a couple world records, and he's just very active in what I would call extreme sports. And I was only 2 years old, so that tells you how old I am now.
Hi, my name is Patrick Conrad. I want you to know it's not easy, but I have more fun at being blind than most people. I just love flying. There's nothing that can beat standing on top of a 60-foot sand dune, jumping off and ending up maybe 3,000-4,000 feet in the air because of the updraft. And it's fun flying like an eagle. I was legally blind. I had to fly in daylight. I could not fly with bad lighting. I had to use good common sense. Never had much of a problem with eyesight. I couldn't drive a car, couldn't get a driver's license, but there's not too many people to run into when you're up there in the air. And so I got by pretty lucky, I guess. I crashed at Creston, Iowa, and I'd taken off a 290-foot hill, and I went up to maybe 500 feet above the hill, was flying around, just having a good time, and a sudden gust of wind come up and smacked my kite up in the air, and I come down, but my buckles were tied with the wire. It got caught in the wire, and I couldn't get unfastened. So the kite went into spiral dive and landed right on top of the hill I'd taken off from earlier. And it killed me. I died 4 times by the time they got me to the hospital. They got me started again by shocks and shot in the heart, and so that was a miracle. But that's what hang gliding is like. You got to be careful.
It was a severe brain injury in which he was unable to walk, talk, or do very much for himself at the time that he was released from the hospital. So my mom decided that it was a good idea to attempt to get horses because she had heard that horses were a great way to help somebody recover or rehabilitate if they had neurological damage, etc. But my dad is also going blind. He was diagnosed with a condition when he was in the Air Force after having an accident and causing a big ruckus when he was in his training platoon.
When I got older, I wanted to be in the Army or the Navy or the Marines. My family all were Army people, so I wanted to be in the service, but the Army wouldn't take me. The Marines wouldn't take me, but I tricked the Air Force into taking me, and they took me. But 6 months later, they told me I could not be in the Air Force anymore, and they sent me home. That 6 months was spent in the hospital, so they trying to figure out what retinitis pigmentosa was, because that's what I had. It's where your eyesight just slowly fades to where you don't see anything.
They had to figure out why he had that accident or figure out what was causing it, whether it was belligerence or truly that he couldn't see what was happening. And they figured out that he had a retinal degenerative condition. And at that time, they told him that they weren't really sure how blind he'd be or what would happen, but they did know that he couldn't see well, and it was progressively getting worse. And so when he had that accident in 1976, it didn't take very long for that trauma to increase the rate at which he went blind. And within 2 years, he was totally blind. So I, from the age of 2 to 4, got horses because my dad had this accident. But I also watched my dad go through seeing quite well for the most part. He was still legally blind when he had the accident, but he went to total blindness within a couple of years. And he still worked on riding those horses and fixing boats. People would bring their boats to him and he'd work on the engines in the barn/garage. So the stables were in the back and the shop was in the front, and he would just tinker around in there, and pretty soon they'd pull their boat out and be really happy because it was working. And my dad was phenomenal at doing things like that. Those horses really did help. He, however, still needed to learn some things. Like, he didn't grow up with a blind parent. He didn't grow up with any support going on for him with his blindness. So he contacted Iowa Commission for the Blind. That's what it was called at the time. And they had a gentleman come out that was really helpful to him. And at the same time, I remember as a child just waiting outside for them to have this meeting, because I was in the barn and messing around with the horses or toys or something, because I was only 4 years old. And I remember running back into that dining room where that conversation was being had, and my dad said, here, meet this gentleman. And I reached my hand out and I shook his hand, and I was just amazed that his hand was so soft. It was a hand that just, it didn't feel like it had worked. It didn't feel like it had much experience, much life in it. It was so soft that I felt like he probably didn't have much experience of fun either. Not just the hard work that my dad did, but he also didn't probably play a whole lot. So I remember looking at his hands and thinking, I don't want those hands. And I looked at my dad's hands, and his hands were rough, and you could still see all of the oil around his nail beds and through the cracks and crevices of his fingers. It was just amazing that my dad's hands were such an example to me of learning how to live and learning how to not give up on what you wanted to do. And I definitely determined that year that I would never have soft hands, because I was also diagnosed and told that I would be blind like my dad someday, that exact year. I don't remember a lot of my childhood thinking I knew what that was going to be like, other than just watching my dad overcome so many things. We were out building fence. If he didn't see what was happening, or missed the nail, or missed the correct nail and hit his fingernail instead, I realized why his hands were so rough. But he got things done. He was very effective, and he taught me how to drive a tractor and not pop a clutch and all the things that go into that. Totally blind. It was really, it was good to have him as an example. I'm really grateful for what he did for me. Not everybody that has a disability has such a wonderful example to show them how to just keep going and not give up. And I'm really grateful for all of that. And I know it's got to be hard for the sighted people around us to watch us, because sometimes it's difficult to watch somebody struggle to tie their shoelaces, even if it's just your child and they'll eventually get it. You want to take over and you want to help them, but it's really awesome how nobody took over for me. They let me figure it out for myself, and you get better and you get faster at it, and eventually you're more than proficient. You're even sometimes better than other people, because you work so hard to make sure that your disability doesn't hold you back. And I really am grateful for that example, because what ended up happening is I had intentions of going to medical school. I got really good grades when I was at Iowa State, especially my second time. My first time, it was a little bit of a challenge, because it was very difficult to get accommodation for disability, and they didn't even understand that I had one. Every time I told somebody I was going blind, they're like, you don't look like it. And I was like, don't know what that's supposed to look like. What does that look like? So it's interesting. I didn't know how to act blind, and neither does my dad. I think he does a great job of helping people through it, because he's always so fun-loving with his glasses, and everybody has humor, and he allows humor to be involved with their perceptions, because it makes them more comfortable when they don't understand what to say or what it's like. And so I really appreciate that example as well. But when I was in school the first time, I didn't get much accommodation. I worked really hard to go to doctors to prove that I had a visual disability, and I would still have pushback about getting my notes or getting things done that I really needed to have done. The second time I went, not only had the accommodations area really improved, and disability seems to be something that has been taken more seriously. The ADA has been working really hard, the Americans with Disabilities Act, to provide opportunities for people with disabilities. So Iowa State took it very serious, and they worked very hard the second time to accommodate me, and I'm really grateful that they figured that out in that time period. But also I learned how to advocate for myself. It's really challenging to turn to people that don't understand what you're going through and say, hey, I know you don't know I'm blind. I don't look blind, but I am. And for that, it's really hard for them to understand also how to help you, because one day when you are progressively going blind, you can see something, everything's fine. And then the next day you don't see it anymore, or you see it differently. So it gives you a different perception or a different feel, and you're trying to figure out again what you have the ability to do. So from day to day, I can't even tell you what I see different today versus yesterday. And so moving forward with going to Des Moines University, I was going to get my master's because I'd wanted to do medical school, but everybody kept perceiving, I don't know how you do that blind. And once I went through and I got my master's in healthcare administration, I decided I don't have to go to medical school. I really like the idea of opening my own clinic. And that's when I started pursuing the equine assisted psychotherapy clinic of Romans Ranch, because I knew I could do that, and I can do this totally blind. And that's really exciting. Not that I couldn't be a psychiatrist or any other type of doctor completely blind, which was what I was intending to do to begin with my degree in medical school. But I'm actually very happy with my trajectory now, because this got me working sooner, and it gets me doing what I really want to do. I don't know that I would have still been able to do this with horses if I'd gotten my medical degree. I probably would have chose a different path, but now I get to be with horses every day, and I get to introduce people to the wonderful gift that they are.
The best way I could describe what I see today, in these specific conditions even, the modeled light is pretty challenging. So I have blind spots, but my brain is really good at filling in those blind spots. So I might not see, because we have some cats that have been running around, and I don't know if they showed up on this with audio. I know they're not on the screen, but they're certainly meowing here and there. So a cat could walk up in front of me right now, and I wouldn't see it unless I was really trying to look for it, because in between those blind spots is where the cat shows up. I know it's there because I can hear it, and then my brain also will fill in. So it's not like I see a black hole and, oh, that's where the cat is. What I see is there's a bed of grass and leaves that are underneath of me, and they all kind of look the same, and they're not very defined at this time. They're really faint. It's almost like an overexposed photograph. With you being a film person or somebody that works with cameras a lot, you probably understand overexposure really well. The average person understands overexposure in such a way that they might not really fully grasp what that means. And it just means that there's so much light allowed into my retina, because the photoreceptors that have died give the signal to the brain that it's not bright enough out here. So open your pupil up. So my pupil will get really wide even though it's really bright out. So it's like it's too bright of conditions, because it is too bright of conditions all the time. And if I go into a low light situation, let's say I walk into a shadow, which actually happens when I horseback ride all the time in the trail. So when you go from the bright sun and then all of a sudden go into a heavily treed area where there's lots of shade, all of a sudden it's like pitch black, and it takes my retinas a long time to adjust, but it also takes my pupils a long time to get down small enough that I can see anything. It's like pitch black. I've just literally walked into a theater with no lights on, just no light at all. And so it takes so much time for any light perception to come back. And so changing environments is very difficult. When I step into a store, a house, or a building from outside, it's probably 5 minutes before I really get any idea of what's in front of me or what's around me. Right now, I can just kind of glance around and see a few things, but it's hard because it feels like today I'm seeing as good as I've ever seen, which is so weird to say. It doesn't seem like I'm as blind as I am until I fall over that wet floor sign, until I trip over a curb that I should have known was there if my eyes were working. It's kind of weird because it's very misleading even to myself. It honestly feels like I'm not that blind, and then I'm like, oh wait, that wasn't a crumpled up leaf I just picked up on the ground. It was, somebody spilled something, so you just try to go, oh, that's not what I thought I was looking at, and so that's kind of the hard part too. I've just accepted it. Maybe as the progression of my vision has gone, it doesn't feel like it's progressing until I lose something that I know I saw yesterday. I think that's the biggest thing. I guess what makes me keep going and makes me keep putting one foot in front of the other is just part of my own internal perseverance. It is truly my life's mission to continue to move forward, because we do face trials. It's just whether or not they're in vain. And so what I mean by that is, if I face trials and I have all these challenges that are in front of me, but I help somebody else that is also facing these challenges, that is also in a situation where they're like, man, I just can't see my way out, and I can help them through that, I couldn't ask for a better gift. It makes my life so enjoyable. I already have enjoyment because I have very fulfilling relationships and a lot of joy in my relationships. I have great family. I love all my children. I love all my horses. How lucky I am. I have one of the most beautiful herds of horses, and the support that I have, and friends galore that have helped me with everything. Setting up the indoor arena. Whenever I'm like, hey, I really need to get grain and Jason's out of town or he's really busy, can somebody run me to get grain? I get a message within moments that, hey, I'm available today. I'll help you get grain. It's just incredible, the support I have. And so I want to be that for somebody else, that when they're going through their darkest time, that I can say, look, it's possible to have people in your life that are just incredible, and let me be a resource to you, and let me be an example to you that it can be done, you can overcome. And that's the most satisfying thing. And if I get to give them the joy that I have for the walk that life is, that's the reward enough.
I have a lot of hopes for the future in what I'm going to be doing here with Romans Ranch, expanding, hiring maybe some more therapists and some more BHIS providers. I think that's really exciting. My personal ambitions, man, I ran 4 marathons before, 2 of them before I went legally blind and 2 of them after I went legally blind. But I really want to get back into running. I have been working on getting my fitness back in shape, and I had a dog that that is my guide dog, and she's doing a great job, and I really need to get her in shape so the 2 of us can start running again now that I've kind of got my health back on track. And my goal is to start running again starting this spring, after I've done the whole winter of strength training and kettlebell, so that my joints hold up, because the likelihood that I'll fall is pretty good, but the key is getting back up without injury. So once I get strong enough, I'm going to start running again. And if my dog is happy doing it, we will start doing a few more 5Ks and maybe a half marathon, and see if she's really feeling it before I do a whole marathon. But that's my goal, is to do a couple more of those for my personal goals. I always want to work with the horses, so I'm hoping I can do maybe a few competitions. I've really thought about how am I going to do something else that really just kind of brings that joy and accomplishment back in my life. And sport is not just important to my dad, it's important to me. And I've been kicking around the idea of doing barrel racing. Now I'm blind enough now that I can't see the barrels if I'm at the starting gate. And so I know where they're supposed to be, so I'm going to probably get to a point where I put like those, I don't know if you've seen these discs, but they're like Frisbee discs, and we could just set them on top of the barrels, and they can have a beeping tone, and just teach my horse to tolerate it, and we'll maybe run barrels and see what I can get done with that. And I don't know. Sky's the limit. I think there's a lot of things that I could still do and want to do, and I don't think I'll quit trying to do things. It's just trying to discover what things are fun enough that I'm going to keep trying to do them.
You know, I think I always have hope that someday they will have some medical treatment or cure that might at least stop my vision loss at this time. You know, if I could just keep what I have right now, it'd be pretty effective at me being able to continue to carry life on just as it is right now without having to have any more accommodation. But I think it's unlikely, specifically for my case, because it's pretty rare. I don't think anybody else has exactly the same condition we do. So even if they can come up with a cure for retinitis pigmentosa, like I said earlier, they might not have anything to treat the autosomal dominant rod cone dystrophy condition that I have. And so my hope is that even if that never happens, that I would continue to be able to be effective in the treatment and in my own life, and have make memories with my family in such a way that we just have joy daily. I strive for excellence, and I'm quite the perfectionist in many areas of my life, so I don't think that's going to change. But I've also learned that I don't have to be perfect. I really kind of like the journey that I've had. The journey has been quite fun. I don't have soft hands, and I'm very proud of that. I really, really like the fact that somebody could offer for me to have a manicure, and I'd be like, no thanks. Not because I don't want to have clean and short nails, but they break themselves off pretty good all on their own, and and I keep them clean, so that's the important part. But yeah, my hands are scarred and happy, full life.